Hello and welcome to today's episode of Birding Conversations, the platform that we can speak about women, husbands, perinatal issues and hardships, and we can just gain so much information, knowledge, and just have an open conversation about all of that. And today, welcome to episode 7, where our guest is Motti Kenigsberg. That's a special guest to have. Motti is a healer, a trauma healer, definitely an entrepreneur, very creative, and is my son, my oldest son, Motti. So welcome, Motti.
Hi, thanks for having me. It's a really cool opportunity as a husband, as a father, to share what I've learned, what I've noticed.
Okay, so Motti, today's conversation, I can see it being very valuable and very informative. And I would like to speak today specifically about husbands. I feel that at all the episodes before, we focused a lot about the moms for a good reason. They are the ones that are giving birth. But at the same time, husbands, fathers play a very, very big role in this newcomer to the world. And I'm going to just start off with a story that last week I had one of the first times that a woman actually called and she said, I'm okay, but from everything I have been reading, my husband is struggling with postpartum depression.
Yes.
And I would like to hear from you more about that.
Yes, I mentioned to you that I heard this speech from Rav Daniel Cohen. He was talking about and explaining the men's cycle. But I think that what I know more is about the process for a guy, for a husband, and through change. Like I think any change in any area of life will cause things to shake, right? So a new baby is a change. It changes the dynamic. Although it seems similar and familiar, and like as a parent, and like every child is new and different and has their own, like how do parents love or feel their relationship with each child? Each child has their own character, personality, relationship, whatever they bring their own uniqueness to a family. So even though a family has done this, we can talk about both, right?
Right.
Firstborn,
first time.
But even
parents.
So, a first-time parent is for sure a change. It's a complete change in dynamic, and so goes with every child. It's just a change in dynamic. Whatever routine the parents have come to, of like how they manage life and what everyone is responsible for, what I do, there's some kind of a groove. It's things are rolling. Hopefully things are rolling, and things are running and they work, right? So a change like that is significant and it's a big deal. So for the dad, it could shake his world up. So for starters, the mom just went through a trauma called birth. She's been through something. Specifically if it hasn't been necessarily an easy one, specifically if the mom is suffering from postpartum depression. There's so often that guys say, oh, my since we had our child, my wife has never been the same. Well, she has never had kids. Every part of her changed, temporary and permanently. Like there is an actual change. So that dynamic shift could shake up a guy's a husband's way of like, this is how we do this. This is not how we do this.
It's all new.
It's everything is different. Like in the firstborn, for sure. A firstborn is like I had an idea of what a kid is like until I had a kid, and then it's like, oh, grown-up life is very different than the way I thought it is, right? So that dynamic shift could really shake things up, and it can really bring up to the surface things that are usually not dealt with.
All of a sudden, things become an issue.
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying?
I think that it surfaces up things that have just not been needed to be dealt with, like how do we deal with when one struggles the way birth can create struggle. um so yeah, I think it's definitely a deal, definitely a thing.
And the thing which is to me like very important to point out that after birth, which we call the postpartum pie, and we divide how the mom can heal, even not in severe cases. So we give a very big portion to the husband for her well-being and
Yeah,
her
I have a
healing.
friend, Nachman Forer. He has, I don't know where he's up to, 12, 13 kids, and his house. I've been a guest in his house, and it's wonderful to see a house of 12, like the way they are. And I remember talking to him about your organization, and I asked him, like, they had 12 kids, and he said he thinks that the reason why his wife at the time didn't struggle with the depression of postpartum, he said, in my house, I remember his face when he said it. He said, in my house, when my wife gives birth, she's a princess for 6 months. We know, like, for the first, I remember, like he said, for the first, like, whatever amount of weeks, she's in her rooms, we serve her, we take care of her, we spoil her, she doesn't need to do anything, we fill up, and he works twice as hard. And that's the thing that he shared with me a lot in the beginning of my current marriage, is like to really, really, really know what it takes to make a household work. And as much as we have roles, right, the purpose of a friendship is that I show up for my friend when they need me, and they show up for me when I need, to fill in.
Right.
So if my wife is my friend, then that's what I'll be doing. And specifically when she went through a birth, and
Right.
there's hormone changes and a dynamic change, and her body needs rest. I learned this in my house. Like, after Layli gave birth, I knew that she needs to take very, very little responsibility, because the smallest responsibility can trigger an anxiety which becomes way bigger than she can handle. Totally. So the question is really, like, how does the guy manage? Because his responsibility didn't go anywhere.
Right. But I'm still going back here to the mom. And when I say the postpartum pie and the husband gets the biggest share, that is the way you mentioned it, which I totally agree with. That even without postpartum depression or an anxiety, just regular postpartum time, the adjustment,
the
change, and the trauma that a mom goes through with giving birth.
Yeah, even if she's not depressed, it's like a lot of not having postpartum depression is the prevention, and to know what to expect, and to expect that mama needs her rest time right now. She really needs an abundance of support, an abundance of, like, calm, not overwhelming changes other than what she's like, just to bond with baby and spend the time to heal and to
get back to herself. Now, especially then we go with the 1 in 5 moms that do experience a form of postpartum depression and anxiety or any different type. Then even the mom, and I've seen this in the past 16 years, even the mom is under psychiatric care, good nutrition, and she has good therapy, and we can fill out that postpartum pie. We can fill it in with all the good parts. But if that part of the husband is missing, I personally,
what part of the husband is missing?
His support, his being there for her, even if she has a doctor, if she has therapy, she has everything. I have seen her almost, can't say impossible, but a very hard time for her to heal.
Because the husband, I think, takes up the role of safety in a house. And if the husband can't, in general, in a relationship, I guess the masculine, okay? So sometimes relationships are reversed, where the masculine can be the woman. So I'm not going, it doesn't have to be any specific way, but the masculine role in the house is safety. So if the woman is in going through a tough time, and the husband is fighting that reality and in denial of that because of whatever triggers that brings up to him. Oh, my house is not as normal as it should be. I'm not normal. Other women don't go through this. And why is my wife like this? If he is out for lunch, then she won't feel safe. And like, as much as logistical support is needed, for guys, very often it's like, oh, problem, I solved it, fixed. What's the problem?
Problem solving.
It's like maybe hopefully he can solve the logistics of what's needed in the house after baby birth. But for him to actually give her the space, look her in the eye, say, yeah, you need time, it's okay, you're not supposed to understand and feel okay yet. that's everything. Given
Right. To
a relationship
normalize
dynamic,
the
yeah.
situation,
So if someone,
which is
it's one
big.
thing when the mother of the normalizes. It's a whole other thing when her husband is actually on board and says,
Right.
yes, this makes sense. So yeah, I that totally resonates. That there's the pie of logistics that need to happen, her support, and the husband supporting the support and acknowledging that this is what's needed, depression or not, just the postpartum period, acknowledging
Even
you'll
just
take
the
it
postpartum
easy,
period, yeah.
you'll have your time, I'm here for you, we'll figure it out, being there,
Just
treating
being there.
the house nice, saying whatever it is, we're gonna figure it out. It'll take time. It's okay. It doesn't have to be figured out in one day. The process takes time, and
Process. And
yeah,
even getting to somehow appreciate and even enjoy the process, which I
yes.
find to be very tough, enjoying the process. Because when we're waiting for
I think
something
you're
and
pushing it. Like I'll work, I'll support, but enjoy. Easy.
but I think that's a good place to get to.
Yeah, to really know what every struggle results in something great if I'm allowing it. Every struggle could give birth to something new. Baby labor is very painful.
Labor is
Was a
painful,
very
yes.
painful process which gives life to a human. So every labor, every pain, every hard work could
I like
result
that.
in something
I like
in
that.
something new. So yeah, it would be a really good mindset to be, or at least for a husband to rely on. Yeah, it might be different, it might be tough. But I specifically remember people that came, like, I remember the look in their eyes of their wives going through a postpartum depression and how worried and freaked out they are. Like, what's happening? What's happening? My wife is not the same.
Could be scary.
Like the not knowing, like, what in the world happened to my wife. The way I know she's just not herself, and the fact that, like, the unspoken makes it a lot worse when it's not known and they can't talk to anyone about it. Makes it really, really hard to be that supportive husband, to be that role of safety, to really, really bring okayness to the house if a guy can't even talk about it.
Right.
So it's important for a guy to
To
actually
have a
have a
space.
space where he can share. I'm going through something, or my house is not the same. I don't know how to manage all this. Otherwise, it's really hard to show up at home.
Right.
I think.
But you know what I also find and was interesting that the woman that called about her husband last week, she was kind of analyzing it, and she said that she thinks that for him, father's role is usually that's the authority and the finances, and she said that she feels that he's struggling with that a lot. Is there something that
With
you
what?
can
With
with
finances?
his he's worrying about
Yeah.
finances and
I mean,
he's worrying about
I've heard a lot of worries. I've heard fathers that felt that they didn't have a choice in this kid. It's sort of like it was imposed on them, and now they somehow have to support it. Like, oh, another child, and whatever that entails. Oh, postpartum. Now I need to spend on this and spend on that. How am I going to do it? So yeah, like that's the what it stirs up. Like the time of postpartum, any transition, any change could bring up. It's like generally change happens when there's a big event that triggers change. Like when everything runs the same, it's very hard to make a change, right? So yeah, if there's another kid and it triggers his financial worries, and
and what about authority? He's the father figure here.
yeah. So it can trigger a bunch of things that were just at bay, at peace,
And what
and
about
it didn't.
jealousy, which I heard too? My wife cannot give me the same attention. She is busy. She has a little newborn that wants her
Right.
all the time. And where am I in this picture?
Yeah.
Which can also be triggering.
Right.
And how, in general, other life situations like past trauma or different situations this couple is coming, their baggage that they come along with, how, from your experience, do you see that triggering or not after birth of a child?
So one of the common things that comes up is what it should be like. And that the shoulds, what it should be like, what the house should be like. When I imagine being a dad and having a family, what it should be like. And generally that is a preset a preset learning. The brain learned it, and it learned it from childhood. So if the childhood was amazing, like the house was running smooth after each baby, was all love and hugs and pictures and matching outfits, and everything was just like so perfect. And now he has a new baby in the house and things are not perfect, that's going to trigger something. And the same goes vice versa. If everything was chaotic and now there's a new baby, and in his subconscious brain all he knows is chaos,
He's kind of looking for it.
He's like expecting chaos. So how excited could he be? Like, how happy is he? So between financial worries and chaos triggers in his head, I heard someone shared with me something amazing that I was amazed at his clarity, and he shared with me that every time he heard the baby cry, all he saw was neglect, while his wife is actually holding the baby and everything is wonderful in his house, like they're emotionally aware and they're connected, they're a good couple. But to him, the sound of a baby crying was almost like a trigger response to neglect, because when he grew up,
he was associated.
Because in his house, what he grew up with was rough, and baby crying wasn't. Baby crying could be their lungs is opening and it's a beautiful occasion. It could be neglect. So It's really, really important to notice what comes up. And what comes up is an opportunity to heal. I recently heard from Dr. Motti, and he said something wonderful. Healing is something that one does themselves. A chair that's broken can't heal. It needs to be fixed. Right. But healing is something that happens on its own.
How?
Which means I can't heal someone else. Their body does it themselves. Like, what does a doctor do? They put a bandage on a wound with the hope that the wound is going to do what? It's going to heal itself. So humans have this amazing ability to heal, which tables, chairs, cars, a mechanic can't heal a car because a car can't heal themselves. Right. So if any significant change, and in this topic, in this conversation, new baby change, hormone changes, dynamic changes, if it triggers old pain or new pain, know that you are a human that can actually heal. And what healing needs is it needs to be allowed to heal, right? So sometimes if a wound is bandaged too hard, too tight, and there's no air,
too much pressure,
it can't heal. So the wife needs that space to heal, and whatever trigger the husband has, and so they need that same thing too. So it's almost like, what is it going to be? A trigger response of pain, or is it going to be a trigger response of healing? Because when I get my space to heal, right, I get that allowance to have air, to speak, to connect in a way that I can actually initiate a process of healing. I can give that further. But if I can't give it to myself, there's no way I can give it to my wife at home. I can't. And
which means that goes with starts with self.
Yeah, that goes with everything. A child that struggles, and the family's going through a hard time. Someone needs to stop the tightness, the closeness, the not allowing, the not talking about it. It's like I mentioned, that guy that told me that his wife is going through postpartum and how difficult it is. The twinkle and softness and manliness in his eyes when he actually shared it. The power in that is enormous. If he can actually walk up to me, it wasn't just me, it wasn't a group of a few guys, and he shared that with us. He was empowered as soon as he put air to this dynamic in his house. It wasn't the same as a dynamic that he can't talk about, because it takes a lot of energy to keep the seal, to not talk about it, to not share, to pretend everything is fine. I much rather spend my energy on healing, on allowing things to heal, rather than keeping it contained.
Yeah, that takes up a lot of energy.
To keep things perfect,
the secret
takes up a lot of energy.
It's exhausting. Mm-hmm. Very, very exhausting. And also when you talk about the whole, bring yourself up to share, it just somehow comes to my mind that anything anything subconscious that has awareness and it becomes conscious, the subconscious is very powerful. And the subconscious is losing that powerfulness once it came into conscious mode. So at the same way, I think when a guy or a mom or both of them, between them, if there is no open communication and there is no conversation about things, and and even things subconsciously are bothering, but once you start a conversation, things are coming up.
It is,
And
and that's
then,
half the,
and that's
that's half
already,
the solution or half the healing.
yeah,
It's really, really painful to sit and hold pain that is that could be lightened and softened and healed just by talking about it. So husbands, if you have a hard time, seek support, talk to someone. You'll be surprised the amount of relief just talking about it gives. And same goes, like your
same
every
goes
week
to
podcast is like the wife should just talk
the
about it.
mom. What is
Yeah.
it that you would tell the husband that really struggles from jealousy? He feels that his place was taken away.
I mean, any first response makes sense. It makes sense that a person has a first response to something like, oh, I shouldn't have this feeling, or they shouldn't have this thought. So for starters, if you're struggling from jealousy, first allow the struggle. There's always, or at least in God's eye, there is a certain humility in the struggle. And maybe the struggle is an opportunity to build a new kind of closeness, to build a new kind of connection. And generally something that hits hard enough, it's worth to hire a therapist, to find the support, to find a place to work through these things, because it's going to come back. It's just going to come back.
If not in this situation,
Yeah, it's going to come
something
back in
else.
other things. Yeah. So first just allow yourself to feel what you feel, and don't, it's really helpful when I don't let it spin in me and eat in me, and actually start a conversation. And sometimes it's worth it to talk to another person rather to the subject, rather to my wife. Like if I'm triggered and it's obviously to me that it's a trigger, what's a trigger? Trigger is that something happened here that awakens something in me that has nothing to do with this here. So specifically,
which is most situations in life, is the subconscious, is the
right. Yeah, it's the way my brain learned how to relate to life. So if I have a jealousy thing, it's probably worth first for me to explore it. Very likely, all I want is more connection with my wife.
Exactly.
And then I can show up, oh, I really want connection with you.
Exactly. That's what I wanted to say. I remember once talking about it to one of the husbands, that he didn't express how he's depressed or something else, but he said it just hard on him. They're newly married. Right away came a child, within the first year. And I said, so what he really wanted is to spend more time with her.
Yes. Yeah, date nights, outings, so many of
like even when she couldn't go out, so within the house, so in times that they couldn't be physically connected, so to play a game or to do something, to feel that this is their time.
Yes.
And expressing that is important.
I mean, eventually couples learn their way, like with years, and they learn their way. There's a time for me, there's a time for individual, and there's a time for we as a whole with the kids, and then there's a time for us.
Right.
And it will, like that jealousy could lead to a greater connection.
Could lead. And now that you're saying the we and individual, how, if you can talk a little bit more about balance, how do you see a husband that has a job, has a wife, has a newborn, has maybe 2 other kids already in his house? How does this balance work from your perspective as a healer, as a father? How do you see it?
So for me personally, balance is really tough. You know me. Balance. I'm not like, I do well in hype. Like there's a lot going on. So what I'm working on a lot is balance. It's learning my yeses and learning my nos, learning what I'm saying yes to and what I'm saying no to, and really, really, really value myself enough to understand that I will have to say no to certain things, and I will never get the yeses I'm looking for in my life unless I actually say no to other things. So much of want in life is I want this, I want to achieve that, inner peace, outer success, whatever it is that I'm after. There's no room unless I learn to say no to other things. So boundaries is a big, and the worst time to put boundaries with a wife is after baby birth. So if a husband feels like it's time for me to put my foot down, wait for 6 months and like
at least
it's really it's gonna work
same way we say don't move an apartment, don't change a job. There are a lot of things you don't do after birth
and
of
one
a
of them
child.
is boundaries with a wife. Whatever dynamic relationship shift that's needed, birth might trigger that. Like it might be like, oh, I'm not, just wait it out and then work on it gently, slowly, patiently. It's gonna figure itself out. Like it's going to, as long as you, husband, keep showing up to what you need, it's gonna figure itself out. You're gonna learn your yeses. You're gonna learn your no's. You're gonna figure it out. But right now, it's important. Like after a baby's born, it's important to consistently bring home a sense of patience. Patience is really what's needed. Like a child, is born, and then 30 whatever years later, we're sitting and talking. It just takes a lot of years. It's a lot of years.
You're bringing me back when I became a mom. What is it that I needed at that point?
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And now when we talk about family dynamics, children, how do you see the difference between first-time parents, second-time parents, third-time parents? How do you see that shifting?
What's really important is to not compare. Just like with trauma, what trauma does is that it sort of, my subconscious learns something, and then I show up with what I've learned way back when to everything in my life, which isn't helpful, right? Because I'm not a child anymore, or it's not that day when I experienced the trauma. So the same goes with everything. Like it's important to not limit myself by past experiences. So to really understand that every child and every new shift in life is going to come with its own package. It's going to come with its light. It's going to come with its beauty, and it's going to come with its new weight or responsibility, I think. It's going to come with its new responsibility.
Is a good word, yeah.
And ultimately, at the end of self-work, I think, and of like allowing, like of the end, like the light of the end of the tunnel is to be capable for more. Like as humans, we have this unique ability to recreate ourselves. That's a powerful thing to do in a lifetime. I can actually recreate myself. As much as I think as I could actually be more. So every child will have its own weight to carry, the financial that it costs, the support that the child needs, that the family needs, and also the ability for me to be more, to become more, to be more than I ever thought I could be. And I know this in my life. I never knew what it's like to have a 15-year-old son, and I'm a different person because of what my son led me to become. What he needs has opened me up to being more, and that's a beautiful opportunity.
You something else.
Yeah, and every child is different with their personality and who I am when they're born. So that's all. It all could be blessings, and it all could be an opportunity to grow more and be more if I let it.
So we spoke a lot about that every person needs love and safety and belonging. And now when we talk about family and dynamics and childbirth, how would you apply those three to our conversation today?
Love, safety, and belonging?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that love, safety, and belonging are like, it's everything, which means that it's part of these things that need to happen unconditional. Yet, the way we live in life is so conditional. We're so limited as humans. So again, like someone needs to stop a cycle or a pattern in generational patterns, in social circles. Someone has to stop the pattern. So for a house to feel safe and loved and people to feel connected.
And each one feels connected.
It's going to take to be willing to look at the things that I'm not comfortable looking at. And that itself will bring me closer to what I need in order to feel okay. And as I feel okay, and the more I feel okay, the more of love, safety, and belonging will happen around me. And it's so easy to expect it from others. So easy. And there's a time and a place to do that.
Right.
There is a time and a place to expect, and it's valuable to expect and get love, safety, and belonging from others. And it's really, really cool when I start being a creator, a conduit, like I'm the creator of love, safety, and belonging around me. And then I receive that too. It's just like for guys sometimes to know is that there is a 2-year ROI, return on investment. Like I need to keep filling with the people around me, first myself, and then the people around me with love, safety, and belonging. There is a return. there is a return. Unless we're dealing with
Be patient. It
unless we're
will
dealing with
come.
a dynamic that needs real change,
Right.
it's not, it just doesn't work. But
Something very
yeah, but
dysfunctional
even
or
then, eventually it'll lead to love, safety, and belonging. If I keep showing up, and I keep being real with myself, and I keep finding people that help me do that, and I trust that process, it's gonna create a life and a home where there is love, safety, and belonging, and people are just. I mean, if I want anything for my kids, is to feel that more. And if I want anything for the world, it's like I want that more.
And what are you going to leave with for the husbands that are going to listen to you here today? Give them the last word.
Just trust the process, and if you feel something, you're probably not the only one. It's not just you. And you'll be surprised what happens if you start sharing, and you'll notice you're not the only one.
You're not the only one. Good. Thank you, Motti.
Thank you.